We've passed on all we know. 1,000 generations live in you now. But this is your fight. Always be with you. No one's ever really gone.
That was the trailer for Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, and man, did that blow me away. That was an absolute ride, especially for being a minute and a half long. So before we get into really discussing what the trailer revealed in terms of plot points or set pieces or characters or even themes, I just want to get your immediate emotional reaction to the trailer, Jackson. What did you think of our first look?
I mean, look, like Disney's really, really good at doing Star Wars trailers. I think, like every trailer they've released since Force Awakens has been, in my opinion, what a trailer should be. They've revealed very, very little about the plot, but they've really captured the emotion and the feeling of Star Wars and experiencing a Star Wars movie, and really sold us on, getting to experience this amazing thing from our childhoods again in a new and fresh way, and really tapping into that nostalgia in a way that doesn't feel cheap. Like I thought with the trailers for Force Awakens, with the trailers for Last Jedi, and now with the trailer for The Rise of Skywalker, there's such an emphasis on legacy. There's such an emphasis on, like this is the end of the Skywalker saga, and what that means for the people who grew up watching Luke Skywalker in the original movies, the people who grew up watching Anakin in the prequels, and the people who are growing up now watching Kylo in the sequels. So
and
it's
Rey. I mean, Rey's...
well. That's the question, isn't it? That's the question, is like, who is the Skywalker who's rising? Is it Leia? Is it Luke? Is it Kylo? Or is it the ultimate fan theory? Is Rey a Skywalker? And I know I have predictions about that, but yeah, what are your thoughts on the title specifically? Because it is an interesting title for this movie, like there really, as far as we know, is only one Skywalker left on the chessboard. It's Kylo. Leia obviously is coming back in some capacity, but probably in a limited capacity because of the untimely death of Carrie Fisher. And then Luke died, spoilers, at the end of Last Jedi. He'll probably come back as a Force ghost, but in terms of like actual Skywalkers still a part of this franchise, it is Kylo. But I'm interested to hear your thoughts and opinions on that.
Yeah, I mean, first off, when the trailer debuted and the title was revealed at the end, I read it literally as The Rise of the Skywalkers, and until I watched it a second time, I'm like, oh, it's The Rise of Skywalker, singular, very singular, very specific, just like The Last Jedi, referring to a single Jedi. I just think by the process of elimination, it becomes pretty clear what the choices are. I mean, for one, Luke is not in physical form anymore. He's very much alive. Mark Hamill is confirmed to be in the movie. He will appear in some form, almost certainly not entirely dead. But I don't really think it's him. I mean, an argument could be made that a lot of the Star Wars saga, the episodes 1 through 9 are about the Skywalkers, but I mean, he didn't come until episode 4, and he kind of passed off the baton pretty recently. I don't think he has to rise anymore. You know, it's like that title doesn't feel like him. And yes, while Leia is alive in canon, we know her character will be very limited because they're not going to recreate Carrie Fisher. So if Leia was to rise, we would need to actually see that and to see a character journey, which the filmmakers simply can't capture because the actress has passed. So then we look at Kylo, and yes, Kylo could have a redemption arc, but I don't think that would be defined as rise. Like redemption of the Skywalker, which I mean is too obvious of a title, but rise sounds like something that's aspirational and something a Jedi would do. It's like a Sith or someone who's living in darkness as Kylo is, he will have to be redeemed and go through an excruciating personal journey to shed the darkness and come to the light before he can rise. And that doesn't really seem what this movie is about. So I mean, really, the only character left that I can think of that will rise and solidify her own legacy is Rey. So I don't know. I mean, this movie, to me, feels like it's going to be more than ever rooted in her journey.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the trailer made that really clear, you know, that this is the completion of Rey's journey to becoming a Jedi master, you know, and what capacity that's going to be is under a lot of debate by fans. Like I know in Last Jedi, you know, it was revealed that she didn't have this epic parentage that some people were expecting. And I know watching this trailer, a lot of people are expecting a sort of retcon of that. People are postulating like, oh, what if she is actually a Skywalker? What if she's Palpatine's granddaughter or Obi-Wan's so-and-so? And I think we're almost kind of looking at it the wrong way. Like when I hear the title The Rise of Skywalker, I think back to the end of Last Jedi and sort of the implication that Luke Skywalker has moved from a flesh and blood human being into a myth, into something
like the very
bigger.
last scene with the kids when they're playing with the toys.
It's moving into something so much bigger than people, and I think that's what the title, at least from where I'm sitting right now, and again, it's hard to postulate just based off of a trailer, but it feels like it's more of a symbolic thing, like the Skywalker legacy is rising into the realm of myth, you know? Like, I love that title. The first piece of text you see on the screen in the trailer is every generation has a legend, and it's like to us, like the Skywalker saga is a legend, and I feel like this movie is going to be a solidification of that. And I find that super interesting.
Well, it's interesting because in the beginning of this trilogy, now, you know, personal feelings aside, I think in past videos or discussions I made my feelings clear on this trilogy, but moving that aside and just sticking with analysis, like when this trilogy started, when Finn first runs into Rey and mentions the map to Luke Skywalker, she goes, Luke Skywalker, I thought that was a myth. I didn't think he was real, essentially. And in this trilogy, we've seen the galaxy really go downhill since Return of the Jedi. And whether it's through First Order brainwashing or just general presence of darkness, you know, the darkness and the light being out of balance, just an excess of darkness in the galaxy, people have forgotten the ideal that Luke Skywalker set, that the rebellion set. You know, people have forgotten the hope and the autonomy and the aspiration that Luke Skywalker brought to the galaxy. And, you know, eventually I guess we'll find out more of what happened in those 30 years. But when we start out the trilogy, the galaxy is in a dark place. And slowly, as we've progressed across the two movies and the properties in between, and now reaching the culmination of this trilogy and Star Wars in general, you got to look at what Star Wars stands for and think, what is the most Star Wars way to end this? Because that's what the filmmakers are going to be thinking. How can we literally, for eternity, make a satisfying end to one of the greatest stories ever told? And that is essentially, even if Luke Skywalker isn't, you know, walking down the First Order with a laser sword or whatever the quote is like he is omniscient in the sense that his personality and his light that he brings, I think, will restore the balance and the hope to the galaxy. Maybe not in a physical way like Return of the Jedi, but a symbolic way through the characters like Rey saying, this is your fight. I mean, if nothing else, I feel like the profound spiritualism and the philosophy of Star Wars has a chance to make a real resurgence, like the very most core Lucas-esque essence of Star Wars. And I mean, that's what I was hoping from the new trilogy. That's what I was hoping for with the new trilogy. And however, indirectly, it seems like the final installment might arrive at that point.
So let's talk a little bit more about the trailer specifically. There's obviously a lot of gorgeous shots in this trailer. I know they went to Jordan and shot a bunch of stuff in the desert. There's that thing with Rey jumping up over the TIE fighter, which I initially thought, I was like, that's a little crazy. But then another part of me was like, that's pretty cool. So
it's a fusion of the prequels. It's a fusion of like the prequel vibe, the prequel blocking, and the original trilogy.
Because there was all of this sort of like balletic martial arts stuff with lightsabers in the prequels, whereas like the new trilogy, like every time there's a lightsaber fight, it's like, dare I say, kind of gritty. Like it feels very down to earth, and it's like people don't really quite know how to use these things because they're ancient weapons and they haven't really been in play for a while. And it's like that move above the TIE fighter was like such a classic old-fashioned Jedi move. It just makes me fascinated to see, you know, how much her training has progressed since Last Jedi, and what she's going to learn in this next movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that Rey wouldn't have been able to do in The Force Awakens or in The Last Jedi. I mean, something that precise. That's like, to me, that moment makes me think of Luke doing that Death Star trench run, where it's like a 1 in a million shot that could only be done with the Force. Like the way Rey times that jump, it's a 1 in a million timing. So it's like she is connected to the Force and knows how to harness it more so than ever before. And we are going to get a pretty significant time jump from what I hear as well between the end of Last Jedi and where this movie starts.
I gotta say, my favorite part of the trailer, personally, was the shot with Leia. I know they've sort of come out and said that they're going to use unused footage of her to really integrate her into the plot. And when I heard that, I was like, yeah, sure, yeah, good luck. You know, I thought it was going to be kind of like a Grand Moff Tarkin and Rogue One situation, where it's like you have this uncanny valley of like, oh, but he's not here. But that shot, it was just like, oh, it hit me so hard. Like, it's, you know, it looks so good and it looks so real, and then you have Leia's theme playing under it music wise. It was just like, I thought overall, like, you know, it's hard to get like as hyped about trailers as it was when Force Awakens came out. Like when the trailer for Force Awakens came out, it was unreal. It was like, are we dreaming? We're getting more Star Wars movies. And now that allure has kind of softened, but you know, that was the only moment in this trailer where I was like, it was like transcendent for me. It was like, so like, I almost started crying. It was just so beautiful. And it made me even more curious, and now a little bit excited to see what role Carrie Fisher is going to play in this, even though she's sadly not with us anymore.
Yeah, I think the technology has progressed even further since 2016 when we got Rogue One. I mean, there's also unused footage and unused scenes or alternate scenes, or I mean, I know The Force Awakens had a lot of stitching together, a lot of quick reshoots, adding to scenes, taking away from scenes. So whatever is left over apparently is going to provide enough live action capture of Carrie Fisher that they can either CGI her surroundings instead of her, or use that as a reference, or do something really cutting edge and blending reality, what was actually physically shot, and also what they would have liked to have shot with her. I don't think they're going to do something that they can't pull off. I think out of respect to Carrie Fisher, they have to be very confident that Leia can have a small but impactful moment or small character arc. I actually do know I think that scene was shot using an alternate take from the Resistance base in The Force Awakens, where Leia and Rey hug after. And so it's like, I hate to spoil the magic, but like if you look closely and look at the past, it's like, oh, that's what they're doing. And then the reverse shot of Rey hugging her is a new shot recently using a body double. So it reminds me a bit of like the Fast and Furious 7 when Paul Walker died. I mean, that was mid-shooting, so they actually used some of what they shot, but he's a central character to that whole family arc in Fast and Furious, and they felt like they couldn't finish out the movie without him. And yeah, I mean, I will always wish that we got the Leia story with her, you know, performing and being a leading role, but I above all, I just want to see them send off that character in a beautiful way, because I think she means a lot to everyone.
I'm pretty confident. You know, I'm like, I have a level of confidence in these movies, which is maybe a little delusional. I know delusional as a Star Wars fan, being that everybody else seems to have. But I was talking with you, just to digress really quickly. I was talking about this with you before the call. You know, it's like, I look at a movie like Rogue One, right? And I'm just like, oh, well, I have a lot of issues with Rogue One. There are a lot of things about that movie that I don't like, that frustrate me, that I would have done differently. And I also am like, I love Rogue One. I love that movie. I love that movie so much. So it's like, I'm sure, if they were to, retcon some of Rian Johnson's stuff that I really liked in Last Jedi, or if they didn't integrate the Leia stuff perfectly, like I still am pretty confident this movie will be a satisfying end to the saga. I mean, like, Kathleen Kennedy is very, very involved in making sure these movies live up to a certain standard of quality. So I'm pretty confident in the movie. There was one point in the trailer, though, and it's kind of the last thing I wanted to ask you about and wanted to discuss, that caught me off guard, and I'm a little iffy about, in terms of how I feel with them pushing this direction, but I don't really even know what the direction is, and that's the teasing Palpatine at the end of the trailer, and
which you didn't catch the first time.
I didn't catch the first time, but it struck me so much because it's like, that's the moment, that's the punchline, like that's the punchline that they choose to end it on. So it's not like the Billy D. Williams cameo where it's like, oh my gosh, Lando's back. It was like they are emphasizing Palpatine all in caps with an exclamation point, and I don't know. I'm interested to hear what you think of that, because I know I have my own personal opinions about including him in this era of this franchise, and including such a big bad guy in this era of this franchise. But what do you think? How did you respond to that laugh at the end?
Oh my gosh, chills. The return of the Senate. I was so happy.
I am the Senate.
Yeah, so there was actually a story arc that was discarded for The Force Awakens that included Rey or somebody retrieving a relic from the ruins of the Death Star underwater. I mean, it is in the Art of the Force Awakens book. And when that shot came up, even before Palpatine's laugh, I was like, oh my gosh, the MacGuffin might be something in the ruins of the Death Star, because here we are, with a big chunk of the Death Star sticking out of an ocean, with our heroes looking to it as if they're trying to get to it. Assuming that's the Death Star from Return of the Jedi, Palpatine was killed on that Death Star by Vader at the end of Return of the Jedi. George Lucas's whole thing, it's like poetry, it rhymes. Now in the 9th episode, our heroes are returning to the same, piece of real estate where the final battle of the last trilogy took place, looking for something that will fulfill a need in their own journey. It's very poetic. It's a very obvious maneuver to take, but also a satisfying one. I mean, to quote Palpatine himself, it's a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. His involvement in this story doesn't bother me, specifically because we have the mask of Vader, the essence of Vader, Yoda, Luke Skywalker. Everyone is still having a role in this story, having an energy. And just like the light needs to rise, the darkness won't let the light rise without putting up a final fight. So I don't know what form it's going to be, a hallucination, a projection, a flashback, him appearing as an evil ghost. I don't know, but it excites me because Star Wars is about mythology. It's about characters. It's about an esoteric view on spirituality as a more collective whole versus one that adheres to a religion. This is good. The more mythology, the better. I mean, it's more of a challenge for JJ to pull something off that's coherent, but it's like, I'd rather see him try his, work his ass off and do something gutsy than play it safe and make another kind of chintzy action movie, which I felt like The Force Awakens was. Sorry, there's my opinion again.
No, yeah, and you know what? Like, I do agree. Like the first movie canonically in this franchise is called The Phantom Menace. Like Palpatine is the bad guy in both of the older trilogies. So it would not be a stretch to suggest that he is involved in still pulling the strings in some capacity now. And I'd buy that. I don't know. I had weirdly mixed feelings about it. And maybe the reason I had weirdly mixed feelings about it is because there was all that nonsense over Snoke in Last Jedi and him not being that big of a deal, and people being frustrated about that. And maybe part of it is just that, like, I thought Palpatine's demise at the end of Return of the Jedi was so perfect that he came to power by killing his master, and then his apprentice kills him. Just, it felt like such this perfect end to his arc, and I just loved the way it all played out. And part of me feels like dredging him up again would be kind of undoing that goodwill. But at the same time, you're right. This this isn't just the conclusion to this trilogy. This is the conclusion to the Skywalker saga, and he has been such a key part of the Skywalker saga that bringing him back and having him play a role in the plot of this movie does make sense. I'm just curious to see how it works. It's the only part that I'm like, what are you gonna do, JJ? Because he's really obsessed with the callbacks and, oh, remember that from the original trilogy? Remember, oh, look, we brought TIE fighters back. But if he can find a way to marry him into Rey's journey, into Poe's journey, into everybody's journey in a way that makes sense and is compelling to these characters right now, then I'll be happy and I'll be satisfied with it.
Well, here's what I also picked up that I want to mention, which is several, and I mean several, visual callbacks to Return of the Jedi, even in this trailer, this very brief trailer. Like, you have that scene with Poe and Finn on that hovercraft, but it looks a bit like the skiff from Return of the Jedi at like the Jabba the Hutt's Jabba the Hutt standoff with the Sarlacc. And I was like, okay, that's cool, but then I'm like, oh, I've seen that before. Characters getting chased down on a skiff that's, open aired, that kind of like with the railings, the exact same shape and design. But I'm like, oh, that's cool. It's on a desert planet, whatever. It's Star Wars. And then there's Lando piloting the Falcon, going like, yeehaw!
With Chewie,
and then he didn't say yeehaw, but he's yelling and piloting the Falcon in his cape. I'm like, where have I seen this before? And and it's something where, again, JJ said, when I came back and I was hired last minute for this movie, I saw the chance to do something truly original, and I hope that's where it's going. But again, okay, there's the Death Star 2 after we've already had a third Death Star, and here's the characters trying to retrieve a MacGuffin from something from the original trilogy, and Lando in a battle piloting the Falcon. At some point, I'm like, Jesus Christ, there's a whole fucking galaxy to explore. But, I really need to reserve myself and give the benefit of the doubt, because there have been many times where I think they're going in one direction and that proves to be a very small moment. Like, if you look at The Last Jedi, everyone's like, oh, it's Hoth with the AT-AT walkers, it's Empire all over again. And then when you saw the movie, for better or worse, that set piece was entirely different, besides a few similar shots.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, I mean, that is it. It's like these trailers are meant to wet our mouths and wet our taste buds and get us excited for it. Like they don't make them to be like poured over by deep lore Star Wars fans to be like, oh, well, like, what are they going to retrieve from the Death Star and this and that? And at the end of the day, the movie is probably going to be a very, very new experience in the way that all of these other Star Wars movies, even Solo, which is full of callbacks, have ended up being. They've all been about pushing the universe, pushing the boundaries of the universe and pushing the story into new exciting directions. So I think it's like, I think the lesson everybody learned from Last Jedi, regardless of whether you liked the movie or not, is that it's like, fan theories are fun, but they should not really affect our expectations going into the movie. And at the end of the day, we have to go in with an open mind. And I'm definitely going in with an open mind. There are things that I think and things that I might have opinions about, but at this point, I'm just excited because, like I said in our discussion in January when we talked about our most anticipated movies, this is my most anticipated movie of the year. The trailer has done nothing to quell that excitement. If anything, it's made me even more excited. Looks gorgeous. I'm pumped. I am in 100%.
Yeah, I gotta say, same here. I mean, I didn't even put this movie on my list, much less my honorable mentions for most anticipated movies. But at this point, I think if the trailer is anything to go by, which is a very big if, but if it's something to go by, I think this is going to go in the direction that I've been dying to see it go. So I'll be first in line for the movie. I cannot believe we are at this point. I mean, it is, it felt like just yesterday that the first teaser of Force Awakens drops, and now it's the first teaser of Episode 9. But in the same way, it's another generation story coming to the close, and that's worth celebrating. So hopefully everyone will go see it and not be too bitter about The Last Jedi. Give this movie a chance, please. I think it'll be worth it.
So thanks for listening. Be sure to check out the other content on our Screen Fever channel. We've got other trailer discussions, we've got video essays, and more episodes of our Home Experience podcast are coming soon, so stay posted for that. In the meantime, I'm Jackson.
And I'm Adam.
And have a great weekend.